Welcome, everybody. It's National Signing Day, and we are here with head coach Manny Diaz to talk about the newest Miami Hurricanes. As always, we'll start off with an opening statement from Coach Diaz and then go into questions. As a reminder, if you could please use the hand raise function in Zoom so we know that you have a question. And with that, we'll turn it over to Coach Diaz. Coach, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Carter. So it's fall 2017. I don't remember the month exactly, but we're in the midst of a season. You know, we're starting off the year 10-0. You know, getting all the way up to the top 5 in the country, and video is starting to surface around Dade County of a very special freshman football player. And so I remember, and again, I don't remember when it was, but I remember driving over and I'm sitting in the coach's office at Monsignor Pace High School, and in walks a 9th grader. And instantly, after watching the film and seeing this young man walk in person, you realize at that moment that this is the exact player that the University of Miami has got to sign to accomplish the goals that we want to accomplish ultimately at this school. That day, which ended up being, I think, his first offer, started a relationship with James Williams and University of Miami football. That was a relationship with myself, Ephraim Bonda, DeMarcus Van Dyke, Blake Baker, so many other people here in our program and in our building. That's 4 years. You know, 4 years, the duration of a recruitment of a player like James, and obviously, like our football program, the recruitment itself not without its ups and downs, and that goes for so many other of the prospects that are on this list that we're sending out today that we're so fortunate to sign today, and whether that's Leonard Taylor, Romello Brinson, Lawrence Seymour, who I believe we offered at a youth camp, maybe between his 8th grade and 9th grade year, which sounds crazy. Rashard Smith. I mean, there's so many others. The local recruits that in the past that Miami had been letting slip away. And as we try to make it one of our battle cries this year of just trying to do things that, you know, Miami in its recent history has struggled to do, something we're so proud of to be able to land the quality of player that we're able to land in this class. And then when you factor in 2021, and who knew that 2021 would be defined by a pandemic that completely altered the landscape of college recruiting. No camps, no in-person evaluations at spring ball or at fall games, no unofficial visits, official visits, no in-home contact, not getting in the living room, nothing. And so ultimately, what did this class come down to? It came down to relationships. Some relationships like James that have been 4 years in the making, some like our very talented offensive signees who had to make up ground, and Rhett Lashley and Rob Likens and Garen Justice, along the help of the phenomenal Stephen Field and Eric Hickson, made up for lost time and really developed great relationships with the offensive players, you know, down here that ultimately ended up in our class. And you have to do it through Zooms. You have to do it talking through a box like this, like I'm doing right now, or through FaceTime. Just so much of what was normal and how you build relationships in recruiting went out the window. But the relentless nature of our staff, through all that, we're really, really proud to add this fine group of Hurricanes to our roster. A class that I have to point out that was mostly committed before we'd even stepped foot on a field this fall. And very much like the 2020 class we signed, you know, mostly a year ago today, they really have one goal in mind, and that's to get Miami back on top of college football. Before we start with questions, I want to thank Andy Vaughn for overseeing our very unique recruiting efforts this year. David Cooney, DeMarcus Van Dyke, and Edwin Pata in our recruiting office, they have had such a massive impact. It's immeasurable what those three men mean to our pursuits and our ability to sign a big-time class like this one. I want to thank Brooke Wilson, as always, for her hard work. And I've got to mention Dominique Nwoko for completely transforming our digital content recruiting. It was something that we felt like was not where it needed to be, and Dominique is she's turned the whole thing around. We're so excited with the impact that she's had on us, and then just, you know, I want to thank our staff, like I mentioned, our coaching staff, who, whether it was in quarantine, whether it was back in the middle of practice, I mean, whether we got guys that are you know, obviously during our little November quarantine, whatever situation it was, they did what was necessary for us to finish the class. And finally, I do want to thank the signees today. I want to thank the signees for putting their faith and trust in our program, and along with their families, I just want to thank them for putting their faith and trust ultimately in the University of Miami. And then with that, I'll open up with questions.
Great. Thank you, Coach. We're going to start off with David Lake from 24/7 Sports. David, go ahead.
Yeah, Coach, wanted to go back to James Williams. You mentioned when you first met him that it was obvious he's the type of player you got to land to, win the games you want to win. In a similar line of thinking, does signing him today represent, he is the type of player, with winning recruiting battles against major programs that you gotta win to keep the big time players home. Understanding you're not going to keep all the big time players home, but the goal is to keep your fair share. Does he kind of symbolize the importance of winning those big recruiting battles here in South Florida as well?
David, I think that's exactly it. And obviously it doesn't start with James. And there are other guys in this class that would represent the same thing as guys in last class, whether it's a Don Chaney or Jalen Knighton, and there are others. But the idea is that it's more. And the idea is that now that if I'm a ninth grader, I know I can be a big time player and I can stay home at the University of Miami. I don't have to go somewhere else to play. And so the more we can kind of, hammer away at that, and the more the players can see that this can be a place where you can have success and meet all your goals, and that'll help us in the future. And this has been, and I think that's why it's important to put it in context of time, because obviously we knew that was really important 4 years ago as well. But some things just take time, and sometimes it just takes a persistence of a program to get it to where you want to. We're not all the way from a recruiting standpoint that we want to be, but some of the changes that we've made in the last almost 24 months are paying dividends, and we hope that they continue to do so, and we suspect that they will.
I want to ask you too about the pass catchers you're signing. Within the context of college football is more and more becoming an offensive sport. The variety of skills that you've added with the pass catchers, with receivers and tight ends. Do you feel like this group has the traits to take things to another level in the future down the road?
We certainly think they have the potential to, and I think you're right. If you look at the NFL, if you look at college football, wide receivers can change games, and that's with what has happened in the RPO game, where really the only way about you can stop it is to play man coverage, or you have to play light in the box, which means you're down numbers to stop the run game in the box. And if someone's got to play man coverage to stop your RPO game, then and they can't cover that guy man to man, you got a big time problem. Or they got to work the double guys, and so adding the likes of a Romello Brinson and his ability to blow a top off of a coverage, that transform you. A guy like Brashard Smith, who is not just a great player, but in my mind a game winner. Did everything for Palmetto High School this year in their playoff run, except for paint the field and spit and stir the Gatorade. He's going to make a play somehow, some way through the course of the game that's going to help your football team win it. And it's usually going to be something pretty extraordinary of him making 3 or 4 guys miss to do something that most guys can't do. And Jacoby George, who came to a camp, it was a 7-on-7 camp here 2 summers ago, which feels like 20 years ago. And nobody in the camp could cover him. His ball skills were exceptional. And so, all 3 of those guys, we feel like we can add in with what we have right now. And they were all sold. Rob Likens and Coach Lashley did a phenomenal job. This was back in the summer when, we were showing video of other schools running the spread offense that eventually we would become. And so I think seeing that and seeing Miami have the success that we had, the development of our wide receivers through the course of the season, I think really meant a lot to those guys.
Next, we'll go to Matt Shadell from Kane Sport. Matt, go ahead.
Hey, Manny. I usually only bother you with one question, but I got a sort of a 2-parter this time since it is signing day. First of all, it's somewhat unusual to have all the commits for the Miami Hurricanes stick. So congrats to you guys on that. So I want to ask you if you felt COVID had a part in that, and B, if maybe you guys were concerned in the last week, maybe you had to really pull this thing together in the last week. So that's the first question. And the second one's sort of related. It's about the COVID issue and more so how it relates to the high schools. Was there difficulty evaluating? I know you talked about 2022 and 2023. I want if you could talk about 2021. Was there difficulty evaluating the kids who made big jumps from their junior to senior seasons? Because usually there's a few of them that you offer late. You'll be like, oh my gosh, this guy really looks different, is amazing this year, things like that. And do you think those guys might have fallen through the cracks for everybody and might wind up at a a non-Power 5 school, for instance, and just be a total stud. Can you talk about both those things, please?
Yeah, I think I'll answer your second question first. I think there's no doubt that there will be some players in this class, not just talking for South Florida or in our little sort of fishbowl, but beyond, that will slip through the cracks. You could make the similar argument that the reason why maybe there may not have been so many obvious ones that did make the big jump between their junior and senior year. I think of like a Brian Balaam a year ago, who I think is going to be a great player for us, because they lost all the opportunities to play. They lost spring practice. They lost the 7-on-7 circuit in the summer. They lost going to the camps and getting instruction. They lost a normal, sort of high school training camp and jamborees and all those type of things. So you get better in this game by playing. And unfortunately, the high school coaches who are always, doing more with less down here in terms of support, they had to throw these teams together when they finally got the green light sometimes in October. I mean, not knowing, are we in, the state playoff bracket? Are we going to opt out? I mean, there was so much uncertainty. So it was difficult. I know, like you mentioned, Matt, about the 22s and 23s, but yeah, I'm sure there's some 21s. We felt like our class, we did have a chance to watch our guys and make the, again, an evaluation to prove that what we thought about them going into their senior year, we still thought about them coming through their senior year. And ultimately, I think the way that the class, came across the finish line reflected that. And then to your previous point, obviously this class had some drama way back when, but really since the summertime, it's been as drama-free of a class as I can remember at my time at UM. And, how much of a role does COVID have in that? That's hard to say. But again, certainly I give credit to our staff and the relationships that they had. And then to the kids, I mean, ultimately it's these guys and what they want, and they bonded tight together. And I think with it's not just one great player that came. There's a bunch of them, and I think they enjoy the company of being with each other and understanding that I don't have to go somewhere and be the only great player. I can be in a class filled with dogs, and I think that's what they felt like.
Next, we'll go to Chris Stock from Inside the U. Chris, go ahead.
Yeah, Coach, going back to the receivers, you signed 3 this year, 4 the year before, and then obviously you can have some returners. Just can you talk about the competitiveness that you're expecting from this group, and you touch on it again with the offense that you're looking forward to having as well. And then another question, just where does your class kind of go from here in terms of spots available? I know you touched on 24 the other day as a number, just maybe what you're looking for moving forward.
Yeah, well, we hope for sure that not just at wide receiver, but at every spot, we're continuing to amp up the competitive nature of our football team. It just feels like, looking back at us, the places where we've got more legitimate competition for playing time, the better we play, which just makes sense, right? So whether it's at the wide receiver room or you saw with the running back room and how those guys push each other throughout the year, I mean, that's what we're hoping to have happen all across the board. And the only way you accomplish that is one way. You got to stack big-time recruiting classes on top of another. So it felt like we got a big one last year. I feel like this is a big-time one this year, and we will, we're already starting the process to do the same thing for the 22s. So that matters. Your second question was about the remaining 4. So obviously there's some ones that we're waiting on, and so and could get news, as soon as tonight or later this week. Whatever we have left through the turn, there are some players who aren't signing, that have entered our attention, that just became available for one reason or another. Certainly, of course, if there's a mid-year guy that we feel like it could come in and help us, we may have some flexibility with that. And then we'll do what we did last year is that there may be a couple of the ones we signed in February to really complete the class position by position. So we'll assess that as we find out exactly what we have, which I think we'll have a better sense of at the end of the week.
Next, we'll go to Manny Navarro from The Athletic. Manny, go ahead.
Hey, Coach Diaz, congrats on a really good signing class. I know all the recruiting victories feel good, but I'm curious about Leonard Taylor because I remember speaking to him in March, right before the pandemic sort of shut everything down at the Under Armour camp, and I asked him about Miami, and he's like, "Oh, they lost FIU. There's no way I'm going there." And in the middle of a pandemic, you changed his mind. You convinced him to come. How did you guys do it from your perspective?
I think the only way you do it is just you have to be relentless in relationships, And again, our recruiting staff, Todd Stroud, Ephraim Banda, just everybody on the defense side of the ball. They were just relentless, with LT. Again, LT's a guy that I think we were his first offer. So we've known him, we've known his mom for a long time, and you just stay after him, and what we always say is, trust, which is so important. Trust is consistency over time, being the same person over time. And ultimately I think that's what started to turn, and obviously as we got into the year and there were some positive changes in our program, and it just shows, look, I mean, there's going to be points where we stumble along the way. Obviously last weekend's an example of it, but it doesn't have to define you. It doesn't dictate your future outcome. And as you mentioned, if it seemed in March that there was one future outcome, well, here we are in December, and it turned out not to be true. And it's easy in recruiting to make big deals. Look at James recruiting, where that went, and guys that committed to us early and then looked around and whatever. And we're going to be who we are. We're going to be consistent, and we're going to be relentless. And I think that's told the tale with not just LT, but with a lot of these kids in this class.
And then the second question, you guys in the first two signing classes that you had there, Manny, I know the first one was kind of rushed, obviously, when you took over for Coach Rick, but 13 transfers I think you guys signed in the first two, obviously none in this one. Do you feel now that you're kind of over having to rely on the transfer portal? And at this point, is that sort of just to maybe address smaller needs?
Yeah, I mean, I would hope so. Obviously there were some things that we were just addressing through the portal. Some things that we were trying to get fixed right away. We're entering, I do have to say this, though, we're kind of entering a very unusual world of college football, as the one-time transfer comes in. So it's going to be a little weird what, I don't know if anybody in the sport really knows what roster management's about to look like, coming up this spring. Again, as I mentioned in this setting before, there are no, as of right now, there are no, initial scholarships to give out for anybody in the country. The entire country is locked in to bring in 25 new players a year. And I would imagine probably at this point, there's probably already more players in the portal than there are spots to take them. So there's a lot of players right now that are jumping without a parachute. So that may have an impact on everybody's roster that ultimately you may have to try to correct through transfers if you're given the ability to do so. So, we're, like I said, we're happy with where we are. We want to be a program that develops the best high school talent we can find, which we always think is going to come from Dade, Broward, and Palm Beach County, and then we'll spread out from there. But in college ball now, I think you got to have the ability to adjust as necessary with these new rules.
Thank you.
Next, we'll go to David Fuentes from the Sun Sentinel. David, go ahead.
Hey, Manny, to follow up on Leonard Taylor, and you mentioned James Williams in that moment, that first moment where you kind of identified him as a freshman. Was there ever a similar sort of moment with him, early on, whenever it may have been? And I have another question after that as well.
With LT?
Yeah.
Yeah, with LT, it was all the way back when he was at Southridge, and then it was a camp. LT would come just to our practices, when he was still at Southridge, and just be around, and then there was a camp performance, and it was, again, just James obviously is just such a unique, talent and his size, and the way he played the senior year at Heritage, I thought he even took his game to a different level. I thought the coaches there were fantastic with James, but Leonard, there's the big time defensive tackle coming out of South Florida. You just don't see those guys all that often. And we felt like we've got, we're super excited about Elijah Roberts a year ago and LT. These people just don't exist all that often. There's a lot more great skill guys running around than there are the super big people. So to see a guy that can move like LT could and can with his skill set and size is just very unique. And that's why, it was pretty obvious early on that he was a special one.
And I also want to ask about linebackers and corners. Your evaluation of the two linebackers you have here, Troutman and obviously Tyler Johnson, Jaquan's brother, and Malik Curtis, same thing. And the importance of getting more corners, whether I don't know how many you're looking for, but to really complete this class, especially with where you are numbers-wise on the roster.
Yeah, we'll certainly look to add 2 corners to our football team, before the season next year. With Malik, we just felt like Malik could add some things that, we love the ones we have, the competitive nature of the guys we have, but we just feel like Malik can add a dimension, maybe a little bit different than some of the guys in our room, just with the all you have to do is watch him on the field, and his sort of game-breaking speed. Value in the return game. We were a little bit inconsistent in the return game this year. That we feel like there are some guys in this class that can help out with that, because if you watch Malik return a kickoff or a punt, and he just chews up yards with that stride of his, so he can really get out and run. And then a linebacker. I'm really excited about the young linebackers that we've added to our program really over the last 3 recruiting classes. Brooks, Huff, Austin Cave, Flagg. And I know I'm missing guys even in that count, but I feel like the guys we added this class kind of go in line with that. Tyler Johnson really can feature as a defensive end for us as well. I think he's got that flexibility. If you watch him in high school, he terrorized people off the edge, and I think we got to give him a chance to do that here as well, because that's such a unique skill set. And then Troutman, instincts, quick decision making, and then a guy that doesn't run to contact, a guy that runs through contact. And just a guy, some guys, it takes them a minute to kind of get linebacker because they got to figure out all the reads. Not Troutman, man. He knows how to do it. He's been a great captain on that team, a leader for a really, big time program in the Orlando area. So, and then a kid that's so cool. He's a South Florida kid. Knows a lot of the guys from the southern part of the county that are in our recruiting class. And so it's kind of a coming home for Deshaun, the same as it is for Elijah Arroyo from Texas. So even 2 of our out-of-state areas are really, 305 at heart, which is pretty cool.
Next, we'll go to Susan Miller-Degnan from the Herald. Susan, go ahead.
Hey, Manny. Great class. I know at least one top player is waiting to announce later today. I know you can't talk about specifics. For coaches, is that still a bit nerve-wracking until it actually happens, or maybe it happened and you just wait until he announces? Can you talk about that first, and I have a follow-up?
Susan, it is nerve-wracking if a kid that tells you he's coming every day of his life, and then you get on signing day, and for whatever reason you're waiting for the fax, or now you can actually do it with a screenshot on your phone. Until it comes in, until they're signed, you don't ever feel, like the game is won. I'll put it like that. So yeah, we're a lot of times, waiting around just like you all are, and you can feel good a certain way, but we've all seen, certainly you've all seen even more than I have here, high drama signing days that go the way you don't want them to go. So if you can get one to go the way you want to go, or get a one without drama like we've kind of had today so far, there's a lot of merit in that. So it's pretty fun.
Okay, that's great. And then also, can you describe you have been describing it, but this class, when you go home tonight, and if it all ends up the way you want, in just a sentence or 2, as far as the big picture for you, the overriding theme, what gets you most excited about this class?
They love Miami. Like I said, I don't know the exact number, but I bet 85% of them were committed before we played a game, coming off of the 6 and 7 from a year ago. And you add them to the ones that committed that signed with us this day last year when we just lost to FIU and Duke. So there's something about them. They believe in what we're doing. They believe in this place. They believe in what it means to be a Miami Hurricane. And then they're really, really talented, and they're tight. They want to come in. They want to go right to work. And like I said, I think as a coaching staff, we can't wait to get them in here.
Thank you.
Next, we'll go to Gabby Urtia. Gabby, go ahead.
Hey, Coach. Obviously, you're going to get a few of these guys in next month, January, like as early enrollees. Just kind of talk about the impact of that. It seems like you might get a decent amount of them in there. So just, how big that is for them, their development, and especially maybe getting a guy like Leonard Taylor, who's probably going to be there next month.
We're hoping for double digits. I don't know exactly which guys for sure, will be in. Part of that is going through the admissions process, but we're hoping, excuse me, again, to get double digits in here. Man, just hoping for a regular off season, right? How cool would that be, just to have a proper off season program, a proper spring practice? That's the part that kind of breaks my heart for the 2020s. Just so much of their development was stunted by not having a real, even the mid-years not having a real January to July. So to get these guys in, to get them, they obviously know a lot of the guys on our team right now. To get them into our building, get them in the locker room, get them with David Feely in our off-season workout conditioning program, I think it'll be so important for them to be able to impact our football team next year. And then even the ones that can't come till summer, there's always some that are in that boat, sometimes because of their school, and that's fine too. But we'll get them in here in May, and again, even just have a proper summer, where we can get 8 or 9 weeks of running and conditioning, and the players can do 7-on-7 on their own. I mean, it'll help us out immensely.
And then just one more thing about Elijah Arroyo. I know you just touched on him. Just seems like kind of like a freaky talent at tight end. A lot fits, a lot of what you guys already do with the position. Can you just kind of expand on him a little bit more?
I like your words. You asked me. You got the. I like freaky talent. I mean, that's what it looks like. I mean, you watch a guy on film. I mean, it felt like the guy scored 4 touchdowns every game, and not just like where they leave the tight end wide open. When you run the tight end corner route from the 2-yard line. I mean, I'm talking about like down the field, lining him up as an X receiver, lining him up in the slot. He's running post, getting past safeties. Then he's catching the ball over the middle and breaking tackles and scoring long touchdowns. So yes, I mean, I think it's not hard for him to imagine, for us to imagine, all the different ways that you can, line them up. You see all the different ways we use Brevin and Will. And then when you factor in Khalil Brantley, just the same, another very unique skill set, great hands, great ball skills that you can use and utilize in so many different ways. So it'll be fun to have the two of those guys coming together and just give us options of how you can line up and present problems to a defense.
Great. Got time for a few more. We'll go to Gary Furman from Kane Sport. Gary, go ahead.
Hi, Manny. The coronavirus kind of necessitated a little bit of a change. Well, not change, but an adjustment in recruiting philosophy for you, focusing almost entirely on South Florida with a couple exceptions. Do you see this hopefully starting a new trend for you? Do you see getting back to a more traditional recruiting philosophy of, venturing out more upstate and outside the state? Or was this a game changer for recruiting philosophy?
Gary, I would push back on that notion a little bit. I don't think I think our philosophy was set before March, before the pandemic ever hit. I mean, we've known, those of us on the staff that have been here over the past few years, I mean, we've been talking about this 2021 class since they were in 9th or 10th grade. I mean, everyone who came down here to recruit knew that the 21 class was going to be special in South Florida. And we didn't get them all. You're never going to get them all. But it just felt like this year we because of everybody, on this staff's efforts, we got a lot more than we normally got. And it just happened to coincide with a big time year in South Florida. So plain full stop, that is our recruiting formula for success. We always want to win Dade and Broward and Palm Beach County first. We have just not always done that. And because we did it this year, we're not guaranteed to do it at the same clip, in the following years, but we will always begin here. We'll always push out to I-4 from there, and then we'll always push up throughout the rest of the state and nationally if it's guys that are the right fit. I mean, that's who we're going to be. It's what's won here in the past. But like many things, it's simple, but it's not so easy to do. And sometimes it takes, a few years to kind of crack the puzzle or to crack the code. And I do think we're getting better and better at it. And hopefully, the last thing I'll say about it again is that hopefully the 22s and 23s and even 24s watching this class sign saying, oh man, I remember I'm in 9th grade now, I'm watching Romello Brinson every day in practice. I mean, he's the best player I've ever seen. I want to go where he goes. Or I'm at Miami Central. I want to go where Lawrence Seymour went because he made that decision. I'm a 9th grader at Palmetto. I want to go to school where Brashard Smith went because, what Brashard meant to me. So just those are the ways that, and those are just a handful of guys I'm talking about. Those are the ways that you can change, the course of recruiting. I mean, to sign 2 kids from Columbus High School, I mean, that's a big deal for us. And there may be a 9th grader at Columbus now that maybe even no one knows about. So that's going to help us down the road of laying the foundation for our future local recruiting.
And then as an extension of that, I mean, college football recruiting has always been coaches flying all over the place, hundreds of thousands of dollars in travel costs spent, coaches having to be away from their families for a month and things like that. Do you see the way recruiting has gone this year? I mean, it's marched onward. Every school is going to have a full signing class. Some did it like you and did it regionally, but some of the other teams around the country still were able to recruit nationally. do you see this maybe altering things a little bit in that sense, to where, you know, coaches aren't traveling constantly all the time at this time of year, and schools maybe aren't spending as much money as they were spending, and those sorts of things?
No, Gary, that's a great question. You know, and will things go all the way back to the way that they were? I could see there could be some potential for some adjustments and some change. I mean, some things like, to your point, that you had to have that you didn't have, and everybody still signed a class anyway. But I'll still say this 21 class was unique because they had probably still been places. You know, certainly all of these guys had been around us and been on our campus, and we had a chance to evaluate almost every one of them in person. The 22s and 23s don't have that advantage. And so I do think there are some things that, whenever, the pandemic subsides, that we do need to get back to normal, just, because, we really won't know until we see what, 3 or 4 years from now, and how you evaluate all the 21 classes. And do we have an advantage because of being local and our kids having been on our campus and knowing who we are and at a different level than, if you're recruiting somewhere from far away. So, I suspect maybe some things won't exactly be the way that they were, but right now that's kind of apropos for college football, because there's a lot of things, there's a lot of change going on, and we're kind of, we're sort of building the bridge as we're crossing it.
Great. Thank you, Coach. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. Enjoy the rest of your Wednesday, and we'll be in touch soon. Thanks.
Thank you all.